Venom. It's happening. Okay.
Wow.
Let's see if
Cool.
it's working. I see that it's live on Penumbra.
Very
Let
cool.
me see. Gonna watch ourselves. There we are. Okay. Incredible. Good
Great.
morning.
Good morning. How's it going?
GM.
I mean, I
Pretty
suppose it's,
good. Good afternoon. Good evening.
yes,
Tell me
I
what
was
it's
about to
like.
say that. It's kind of funny how in a decentralized economy, you can't really say good morning, good evening, etc. It's kind of like,
Or even
depends on
happy
the case.
Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Cool.
hello.
Um,
So, so this is our first time going straight to X. We have been doing this in Discord, so we're going to try this out over here. Please
mhm,
comment, send in your thoughts, send in your ideas. That was our favorite thing about Discord is that we could interact with
mhm.
you all. So please, like, get in the chat. We are also there, and that helps us know what is going on with you all. So welcome. Just a bit of introduction. You probably know this because you're watching us, but we are different entities within the Penumbra realm, the Penumbra world. On one side, we have hello, Sean. Thank you for responding. I love that. Um, so we have Park, who's representing Penumbra. Radiant Commons, who's
Yeah.
the go-to-market entity for Penumbra, and then we have Gar, who's product manager. I was like PM for Penumbra Labs, who has lots of exciting updates for us, and that is us. So usually we do like a quick update from both, and then kind of get into the meat of things.
Mhm.
Yeah, Park and Gar, can you tell us a little bit about what is going on, and then we can dive in?
Sure. I was kind of thinking like the approach I would be able to offer. I mean, I've got like a few kind of things I wanted to get through, and then we can go over to Gar, and Gar could offer some more technical updates. But maybe we can give some like kind of I'm gonna give a little bit of like a summary of the agenda I've thought for myself. It's
Perfect.
like
Yep.
um, kind of some updates about protocol and development. Um, some we've been hinting at this liquidity tournament that's coming in the near future. That's in production, and we're very excited to talk about that. If you are watching this video, you are getting alpha. The reason that there's not been anything publicly released is because this is the source at which you're going to get it, and as things solidify, you'll be able to um, um, uh, learn a lot more about it. Then I kind of wanted to talk about like some progress we're making in ecosystem and partnerships, some vision and strategy progress that we're making as an ecosystem. Turn it over to Gar for some live demos, then leave some room for questions and answers, and then we can kind of like talk about what our next steps look like. So cool. So with that having been said, um, on the front of things that are happening with the protocol, in the environment around the protocol, and like what we can expect to see improved. Obviously, there's continuous iteration happening with Veil, the Explorer. That's what Gar is going to be speaking to a little bit more, and that is the trading interface for Penumbra. And um, basically the alpha version has been released, and there's a lot of work being put in on improving that user experience, also putting in some like very specifically user oriented quality of life improvements. For example, the ability to look at a portfolio and hold from there. Another good update is that there is a dev shop that has been building an Explorer for Penumbra that currently is kind of like past the V1 stage, and we envision that we can go live with that V1 fairly soon. They'll be demoing on a future call, and that's for like a good block explorer that Penumbra users can use to kind of examine their transactions, both in terms of both like any information that's public that has to do with IBC, and then anything that's inside of the IBC boundary for Penumbra. So it's more focused. It's useful for anyone to verify that a transaction has happened. It's going to be very useful for developers who need to dig into transaction, uh, the qualities of an individual transaction, and need to go through it. So so they have what they need in order to continue developing. So that's pretty exciting. It's coming along quite a bit right now. That project has been mostly focused on using on-chain data to just show evidence of transactions happening in the first place. We have populated tables. As I mentioned, there will be a demo of that in the near future. On the next call, they just simply time zones didn't line up for this one. And when that goes live, everyone will be able to use that to, you know, better like dig into the information that's actually available on Penumbra. Which, by the way, it's a private network. It's pretty cool to see what's public and what's not. In an individual transaction, that's kind of like one of the more that's some of the special qualities that you'll be able to see. Um, so with this on the back end, there's also a lot of work being put into trying to like reveal useful metrics for the growth of the network. So this is some like iterations probably going to be happening with our insights dashboard, which if y'all are common with this, if y'all are familiar with this, it's insights.penumbra.zone. You can go and look at total value shielded, current value shielded on the network. And that page will also be just like developed a little bit to act as like a dashboard that people can come to look at like the growth of the network a little bit. And it's entirely possible that dashboard will actually get merged in with the Explorer over time. Right now, they're maintained by separate organizations. But because of the work that's been put into sort of unifying the product experience across all of these different applications built by different entities in the Penumbra ecosystem, there could be a situation where the open source code developed by one team can be kind of merged into the open source code being developed by another team. So that's something to look forward to, is just like bringing more visibility into what's actually happening on Penumbra so that people have better insights into the network that they want to utilize, and then can make the decisions based on that information about sort of like the longevity of Penumbra and like how it's doing as a network. There's a lot of product development happening that we're very excited about. And a lot of this, very crucially, is happening in partnership with community members. After our last community call, Gar spoke specifically with members who are in the community who listened to the last community call and gathered feedback from them. So I just want to use this as a chance to really have people understand that um, user feedback is an incredibly important component of how Penumbra is being developed, and this feedback is specifically what helps improve the product over time. And a lot of our emphasis on the Radiant Commons side is gathering this feedback and trying to perfect the feedback sort of experience so that that information is available to all developers in the Penumbra ecosystem. One cool tip to one cool little bit of news is that there is also going to be a lot of effort over the next couple of quarters to improve the developer experience specifically on Penumbra and like open that up to people. And that's something that's going to be worked on extensively between Radiant Commons and Penumbra Labs and other entities within the space. So a lot of this has been, like if you all have been following us on Twitter, you also see that there have been improvements to the wallet experience. It's all sort of underlying this very important imperative in the Penumbra ecosystem to develop products as close to the user as possible. Since Penumbra's focus is to be as close to the user as possible, it also means that we have to have a dialogue between the people who are developing software in the ecosystem and the people who are using that software. And because of that, it's incredibly important that that experience is not painful. And because of that, we've been very excited about the feedback that has come in so far. We want to continue to iterate on that. And this is largely what fuels a lot of the improvements to the software itself beyond the innovations that the Penumbra Labs team has been building, and so on. So I think the next thing I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit is the Liquidity tournament, and just kind of give like a very brief primer, not as an announcement of like what people can expect, but there will be a lot of information released about this when it actually happens. There is a post on the forum written by the founder of Penumbra that people can dig into, but I'm excited to say that like that's actually being worked on, right? And will be something that is integrated into Penumbra as a protocol. So I'm being a little glib with like what it is that I'm describing here, but essentially, um, there is going to be like a very interesting game that will be played on top of Veil that people will have access to. And being able to talk about that more as we develop that part of the experience, I think is like very crucial to understanding what people can expect. So I don't want to speak about that for too long, but like it will involve staking. So if you are a holder of Penumbra, it is a good idea for you to stake your specifically because not only are you securing the network, but also you might have access to other things in the ecosystem. Obviously, the staking meta is something that we have had a lot of experience in the IBC connected ecosystem of understanding that there are sometimes rewards for staking with Penumbra. This is not necessarily about airdrops, right? This is specific to how can delegators make themselves more useful to the chain itself. So thank you, Amber. I really appreciate you sharing that. Um, the so the idea here is that we expand the useful set of things that a delegator can do to improve the overall experience of using Penumbra. And we also improve the experience of being a liquidity provider on the chain. And so there's a lot of approaches that are they're kind of being iterated on right now. It's in early stages right now, but timelines are probably feeling like everyone should really start paying attention to what's going to be coming. Probably somewhere towards the beginning of next month into the end of next month. This is like kind of our optimistic bet on the way things have been proceeding. There will also be a lot more shared publicly. Um, so now speaking a little bit more to ecosystems and partnerships, and just kind of like summarizing that for people to have kind of a better understanding of where Penumbra is kind of looking. Obviously, Penumbra has its established connections with other domains. We have a connection to Stride. We have a connection, I think some people have noticed, we have a connection to Axelar, which means that Ethereum assets are actually also available on Penumbra. But there's also like the long-standing connection to all other IBC ecosystems that is being improved. And I'm excited to announce that there are a lot more connections on the near horizon. And those connections mean that even more assets can flow in from the IBC connected ecosystem and be shielded within Penumbra's multi-asset shielded pool. So I'm also kind of realizing while I'm talking about this, I don't think we talk about what Penumbra does enough. So we talk about the multi-asset shielded pool, right? There's a few people who are already familiar with Penumbra. Um, it would be worth maybe talking about what the multi-asset shielded pool is. Like the people who are familiar with Penumbra understand what a multi-asset shielded pool is from the perspective of like already being a privacy maxi. If you're watching this and you aren't familiar with what that is, a multi-asset shielded pool is the boundary within which it's not actually possible to track people's movement of assets, right? So it's the boundary by which a user is able to start benefiting from the privacy of a domain. Penumbra is not the only ecosystem to offer this. There's also Namada that's in the IBC connected ecosystem that we're very excited to see them coming to a stage of like transfers being enabled and them growing their own multi-asset shielded pool. And so with this in mind, right, like there's the idea behind this is that as there's a growth of privacy within the IBC connected ecosystem, there's a higher likelihood that you're not actually leaking your alpha throughout your movement across different app chains. And with Penumbra in particular, when you have your assets within Penumbra and you operate in and without and then return to Penumbra, you're not leaking any privacy across domains. And so we're very excited to see like the shielded narrative kind of unfold and grow. And so I'm again like very excited to see Namada's growth as well, and to see people who to see these kind of communities work together. So that's one place where I think we can see some growth of partnerships, just so that like we're not just talking about partnerships and we're actually still explaining what it is that we do as an ecosystem in engaging with privacy. But it's also about asking like what other ecosystemic growth is possible. So privacy protocols that are connected to the Cosmos ecosystem, such as Secret or Namada or Penumbra, are built to enable users. And because of that, there's a lot of progress that is being made on the part of the Penumbra ecosystem in particular to sort of try to grow the available set of people who can call themselves community members. And because of that, we're working on some partnerships that are more regional worldwide. So this is something else to expect, is to expect that there is actually going to be like maybe like a propensity of uh, or there might be like some more regional hackathons that start popping up. This is something that's we're discussing with different partners. So this is something that people can expect. And the particular areas that we're looking at right now would be in Latin America, could be in Southeast Asia, and then parts of Africa, because we obviously we think privacy technology is something that should be available to everyone. And I've been very heartened myself from the strategic level of understanding that these markets are growing in terms of crypto usage, and we'd really like to be able to bring in people from those user environments. So if you're from any of those areas and you want to participate in a hackathon that has to do with Penumbra, I suggest following our account and staying tuned for updates. You can also like put on notifications specifically for tweets from Penumbra, and you'll hear a lot more in the future as we start like establishing these partnerships with potential hackathon providers in the future.
And come say hi in the Discord. We're all there.
Yes, yes. Also join us in the Discord, because we are in there, and we can discuss more of the finer details around how to implement these things. That's the best place to like find the team and speak to us, is on the Penumbra Discord. So yeah, so that's just to sort of understand where we're at. There are more of these strategic partnerships that are on the way. There's some like there's obviously establishing connections with other privacy protocols like Namada. There's also connecting to a variety of other chains throughout the Cosmos ecosystem. There's sort of, and then from there, on one of the previous calls, right, like we discussed a little bit about what is the vision for Penumbra in the longer term. And so what does it mean to like establish all these connections and try to create an economic center that gives people and provides people with the privacy necessary to really as close to the user as possible, offer you the guarantees of what crypto is supposed to be there in the first place. And um, the intent for the strategy, if you weren't on the last call, to get caught up on this, is that Penumbra should probably is very well positioned to become like a home for crypto. And so all of the work that's been going into product development and gathering user feedback and positioning in the ecosystem is to sort of just try to see if this is the thesis that Penumbra can kind of grow into. And this is why the user experience is such like an important and integral part of the such an important part of the Penumbra experience. This is the reason that a UI library that can be shared across all of the different development paradigms that exist in the Penumbra ecosystem are made available to developers. And so with this in mind, one of the really important parts of the strategy is also to enable builders themselves. So I mentioned earlier, right, the idea of hackathons, also improving the overall developer experience. And I think this is a good time as well to mention that like a lot more work is being put into maybe developing what like the SDK experience can be like for developers themselves. Um, and this is with the hope to like kind of grow a broader developer community around Penumbra, so that people are not just using Penumbra for shielding their assets and transacting, but are also enabled to build private applications themselves that can be connected to Penumbra or that utilize Penumbra in some way. There's a lot under the hood of Penumbra, and what we really want to push forward is an initiative to bring people in to better understand what that architecture looks like and how people can use it. So yeah, I think it's from here. I think I kind of want to turn this over to Gar to give a little bit of a demo on more concrete stuff. Maybe I could give you like kind of free open reign if you'd like, Gar, or like I could target specific things, but I feel like you've been working on a lot of things that have to do with the user experience. So maybe I just want to go ahead and hand it over to you.
Yeah, for sure. I have
Hmm.
some things ready, so let's stick to that.
Awesome, that sounds good.
Okay, so thank you for, first of all, setting the scene
Sure.
so well, Park.
Mhm.
Couple of things before I want to make sure that I hit a couple of points before I start. Oh yeah, first of all, thank you so much to the folks who on the last community call offered to help with user feedback. We're still kind of working through some of that, but it's always very exciting to me to have really engaged community members. Like, you're our lifeblood. We want to be building for our community and for our users, and I really appreciate that. I encourage everyone on the call today, be in Discord. There's a feedback channel right in there, so feel free to proactively provide your feedback on the user experience in there, and also look out for any requests that we pop in there for feedback on specific upcoming features. So I think let's see, where should I start? There's a couple of upcoming features that I'd like to, are improvements, I suppose, quality of life improvements to Veil that I'd like to focus on today. As Park mentioned, we listen very keenly to user feedback. We're still in our alpha stages of Veil, and it's exactly the right time to be iterating quickly based on the really valuable feedback that we get from our users. So I wanted to just show you some work in progress. Let me see here. So the first thing I'd like to focus on, actually, before I share my screen, I'll talk a little bit about it. So the first thing I want to focus on is the My Positions panel that you see in Veil. The initial feedback that we got on the My Positions panel is that, in general, given the way that the Veil DEX works, as distinct from maybe other DEXs that users would be familiar with, as you may know, as a liquidity provider in Veil, using what we call the range liquidity tool, you may be opening 10, 15, 20 liquidity positions at a time. And as such, any given liquidity provider using the Veil DEX will probably have quite a few more positions to manage in there than you would on a regular DEX that doesn't function that way. And so the feedback was,
Gart, sorry to interrupt, but could we get a screen share so that we can see what you're talking about alongside? Is that okay?
Yeah, I was going to do that slightly after, but I'll pop it up now. It's just
thank you. I know it's always helpful for me when it's like,
yeah, there's just a lot here.
Yeah, so thank you.
Kind of talk through it while we were
totally.
So
thank you.
Where was I going with that? So yeah, so any given liquidity provider using the Veil DEX will likely have many more liquidity positions to manage than they would on in a similar UI on a different DEX. And so I think there are three main improvements that we're making to the My Positions interface. The first is that we've included timestamps here, which is nice, and the facility to order your positions in order of when they were created, which was something that was not possible before, but as a really low-hanging fruit piece of UI improvement that I think will help. The second thing that we've done here is allow for the segmentation of positions by pair. So you can see here in front of you, we're segmenting on the USDC pair and the Osmo pair. Again, if you have specific strategies as a liquidity provider, it's likely you can segment those strategies by trading pair, and as such, it makes sense to segment your positions in that way, although this will be optional. And then the last piece that I'll draw your attention to here is that we had a very specific request that if those of you who have actually used the liquidity provision tools in Veil, can everyone? Okay. Will know that what happens is that you essentially you set an upper and a lower bound of a price, and then the tool opens up discrete positions equidistant within that range. And so you end up with again, 10, 15 liquidity positions for a given strategy, but it hasn't always been, or it hasn't been at all, easy to distinguish those positions from a limit order that you may have opened. And so you can see here in the type column, we've made it really easy for you to see exactly what the difference is there. So that's the first piece of upcoming UI improvement that I wanted to focus on. I always give this caveat, this is very much work in progress. I like to give the community the kind of privileged position of seeing this as it's happening, but just be aware that there may be some slight changes in this before it's shipped. So then what I'll move on to is, so just before I share anything, just quickly wanted to acknowledge that in order for users of the Veil DEX, liquidity providers, in order to maximize the economic opportunity that exists within the DEX, it's really important, as Park actually mentioned in terms of our insights page, it's really important to understand what is happening in the DEX and what is happening with my positions and what is happening with all the other positions that are out there. And so there are a number of ways that we can kind of facilitate the process by which liquidity providers gather that information. One that's in the works and that we don't really have anything to show right now is we're working on an appropriate algorithm to calculate P&L or markdown for a given position. That will be very important for liquidity providers themselves to understand the state of their own strategies and the state of their own positions, but also that will be something that will be a metric by which you can actually filter and stack rank all of the positions that are open in Veil at any given moment. So it's easy for you as a liquidity provider to understand, okay, where is the money being made? What are the strategies that are successful, and how can I hope to emulate those strategies? A second piece of information that we want to make it really easy to find is in the improved route book. I'll just make sure I'm sharing the right thing here. I am. Okay, so as it stands in the route book today, it's relatively rudimentary in that, yes, you can see for any given execution, you can see the hops that it's taken along the way, but there is kind of not as much information as you would like to see in there to really gain a keen understanding of what has happened for any given execution. And so as you can see here, we've expanded the functionality of the route book panel, which is in the top right of the trading interface in Veil, with a lot more information that actually will give you the insights that you need to actually understand what exactly is happening at any given moment within Veil. I really like this panel because it's like we took very deliberate steps to ensure that the interface in Veil is what's the word I'm looking for, is familiar to to those of our users coming from other DEXs. So it should look and operate very similar to that, to your favorite DEX, and actually maybe even more so to your favorite centralized exchange. We wanted to make sure that that user interface was familiar. But the route book is a part of the interface that really allows us to show kind of some of the magic that's happening underneath the hood with Veil and with our DEX engine. And this is exactly what we're illustrating here. So then the last thing that I wanted to cover today was that something I've been spending a lot of time over the last 2 weeks on is trying to nail down the spec for Prax V2. So the wallet with which you interact with the Penumbra ecosystem. And what I would like to, I don't have a lot to talk about today. I think it's important to note that we're still gathering lots of feedback. Some really important improvements that we will be shipping are things like ledger hardware support, the facility to manage multiple accounts within your Prax interface, and also the facility to more efficiently manage sub accounts, which will be used by sophisticated liquidity providers to segment strategies. But what I want to do right now is send the call out to you all on the call, either now live or later in Discord. I'd love to hear from you all a wish list of anything that you would like to see in Prax V2. It's the right time right now to be voicing your opinions and to be asking for features or improvements that maybe have stuck as a nickel in your head for a little bit of time. So the floor, exactly, dear Santa. The floor is open for live comments here, but also feel free to drop those suggestions in Discord. Actually, now that I think about it, what I'll do is I will post it. I will post this in Discord and ask for feedback and feature requests in a specific thread. So keep an eye out for that. I should have had a link ready to do that now, but I don't. So I'll post that in Discord and keep an eye out for that. And I think that's everything I have to share this week. Very busy as always, getting lots of keen feedback, executing on it as quickly as we can. And yeah, exciting times.
Amazing.
Yeah,
here's Park.
It's okay. I know there's like we're still trying to figure out how to make StreamYard work for us, but yeah, Gar, thank you so much again for walking through some of the work that Penumbra Labs is putting into improving the user experience. That's very exciting. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, from there, I mean, I do want to offer some room for people to be able to ask some questions if they're out in the audience. I see we have about we have almost like 400 people watching on X right now. So want to offer some room for people to ask questions if they have any. Can we get a Zcash USD pair? In theory, this would be possible. The problem with this is that Zcash doesn't necessarily have like an easy bridge out. I know this is something that is aspired to, but one of the issues with Zcash is that it doesn't really have this interoperability feature. So that would be really great to be able to do, but since Zcash is kind of a closed ecosystem, that means that you can't really put Zcash on decentralized exchanges in that way. So you can put it in centralized exchanges as a representative quantity, but like the outflows from Zcash into other domains, or the outflow of Zcash from a centralized exchange is only onto the Zcash network. So that would be the reason. That's a great question, though. It's a good way of understanding what it is that's possible inside of the IBC ecosystem. Happy to take any other questions if people have them. That's a great question too. I think it's like, Gar, I mean, like, I'm kind of curious on your side. I could kind of like ask you here too. Like, I know that you, your exposure to the Cosmos ecosystem didn't really precede being a part of Penumbra too much, right? Yeah. So
yeah, that's right.
Cool.
Obviously very aware of what was happening in the ecosystem,
Mm-hmm.
but not to a detailed level now.
Right. Yeah. So I'm curious, like, how has your mental model sort of shifted around product development here, knowing that you can like bring in assets from other chains that are kind of like in and around Penumbra through IBC? Like, do you like since you're managing this from a product perspective and like understanding, not just like development from the development side, but also like just the product experience itself. Like, how is it fundamentally different from other stuff you've worked on so far?
Yeah, I mean that's a very interesting and relevant question. I came
Mm-hmm.
from O1 Labs working on Mina, and I felt there were certain restrictions on what we could ideate and what we could build, because we had no bridges, and I still don't think there's an ETH bridge right now, and so that was like my hands were really quite tied there. And so I think the process of ideating solutions, within the Cosmos ecosystem is, it's kind of opened my eyes quite a bit, right? Because now not only do we have, the tools to be able to build products that span, a wide range of communities. There's also lots of opportunity for easy partnerships, right? Like as in yes, there's tech behind some of those partnerships, but it's a lot simpler of a challenge than it had been for me in the past. And I think what's really interesting is you talked briefly about the work we're going to be doing from a developer perspective. That also I think is really interesting, because there's always a challenge when building out a developer ecosystem or even a developer community. You have to attract people to your to work specifically on your product, and to tie themselves in terms of, it could be financial ties, or basically just their time, right? You're asking developers to spend their time and commit their time to something that they don't know if it's going to be worth their time, And so
Right,
if you can
right.
communicate a story to a developer that we're not just asking you to come and only develop something that will only ever work with Penumbra or would only work outside of Penumbra if we get this bridge built or if these things happen down the line. The connections are there already. And so that's a really powerful story for developers, I believe. And that's something that really is driving me to think more about the developer experience and the developer enablement journey.
Yeah, it's a great answer. It has to have been very interesting, kind of like seeing the I don't know. It's like I think every time someone gets pilled on the interoperability narrative, it's kind of like this light bulb moment where you're like, oh, we were fundamentally limited by not being able to interact with other chains. And you realize that like that's actually more how most global economic systems work. Like having kind of a walled garden works only as far as your walled garden is like useful and or you know um, fertile, I guess is a word I can use there. So it's like I think my time in the Cosmos ecosystem has felt similar, right? It's kind of this realization. It's like, oh, well, like there's so many approaches to the crypto problem. The interoperability narrative is really something that makes a lot of sense with respect to realizing that like there's just this increasing fragmentation. Well, if there's all this fragmentation, you also need a way to like have things communicate so that fragmentation isn't a dead end, right? And this is why like the IBC primitive is so powerful, which is another reason that like uh, having a privacy protocol developed so much later down the road after IBC was developed is really really powerful to this um, to having it's very powerful to having this entire open ecosystem finally have access to product improvements that other ecosystems are really having to like kind of fix retroactively or have like kind of in some ways completely abandoned, right? We kind of look at the historical narrative of how it is that crypto is developed, and a lot of the development narrative kind of like moved in this direction towards like creating more complex infrastructure and creating like applications that we hope people are using, and there are actually a lot of applications that people are using, but um, and I think in that kind of path towards developing applications for end users, some of the original mission of crypto has been somewhat sidelined. I wouldn't say abandoned because there's a lot of really amazing teams that have been working on the solutions here. I mean, I'm talking about anyone from like Zcash being like the first movers on ensuring that there's privacy, all the way into where we are right now, where we have this like um, strong diversity of different privacy applications that are being built, and even some people who are theorizing about like what does privacy 2.0 look like for crypto. I'm talking about teams like Nillion. Um, People who want to build privacy architecture around it. I think RCM as well, like some really fantastic teams. But it's like for us, I think we're still trying very hard to like focus in on um, does 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 the system even give us the guarantees that we're supposed to have at a user level? And being that like privacy has been so sidelined, I think some of the thinking that has entered crypto up to this point has been like a little bit like, oh, privacy is like an option, it's an add-on, right? Like I'm gonna go use all of these chains, but like, oh, I really wish I had privacy, so I'm gonna go and use this like privacy module that's like like optional, or like engage with something like Tornado Cash, where it's like, oh, well, I can engage with privacy on Tornado Cash or Railgun or any of these um, options that exist in the Ethereum ecosystem. But like it turns out actually like maybe the focus shouldn't be so much on like optional privacy, but rather like recognizing that a good user experience is mostly focused at the user level. Or sorry, is that a good user experience like integrally has to have privacy at the base layer to the point where a user shouldn't have to think about it, right? Like it should just be something that you're using. And so I think a lot of what we've seen developing within the Penumbra ecosystem that like gets me very excited, and that we're very excited to see Penumbra Labs continue to develop, and we're starting to see like this kind of growth of other dev shops starting to work with Penumbra's parts and coming back to us with feedback saying like, oh, like there's some amazing primitives here, is recognizing that like if you just build applications that are useful to people that are also private, that actually like enables like so much better of a user experience, because you're not having to optionally add on something that you know you want. You just get the thing you know you want, and then you build beyond it. Um, so I'm very heartened by the fact that like this work has been put into developing Penumbra this way, because it means that like there is the potential for it to become like something that can be a user experience layer for uh, interacting with other domains, interacting with and in a multi-chain ecosystem, and then just maybe even in the future, just being where it is that you store your crypto more generally, because we've seen such user side risk on having the use of public chains. So it strikes me that like the most important qualities of chains, actually, like from the user perspective, is like privacy has to be there as like something you're not even thinking about anymore, so you can selectively reveal it. So we got some other questions here. Where do you see
Yeah, I see.
Penumbra
I
in the
see.
next year?
I see one there from quite an Irish name, Sean Coughlin. I like seeing that.
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
and it's yeah, you're echoing my thoughts there, Sean. I'm assuming others can see it, but I'll read it. That's the
yeah,
one thing we know
yeah.
from experience. Oh, cool.
Cool feature.
I like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're 100% right. Like we see it, we've seen it in Web 2 over and over and over again, right? Somebody will develop a, I don't know, a Facebook, but with privacy. That doesn't really make sense for a social network, but you know what I mean. An option and
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
an option with privacy, and it's very hard to attract users to switch. And like the idea of building privacy and right at the base layer, such that it's an integral part of everything that gets built, and ideally with Penumbra as a user interface. I think that's crucial.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I mean, I love that we just put that up there, because like I think like if privacy is an option, I mean, this is the same thing I experience with like my friends trying to convert them over to using Signal, right? Like it's like I almost feel like an evangelist when I have to do that, which is kind of like, I don't know, it doesn't feel great. And a lot of people talk about it from the privacy perspective. They'll be like, oh, well, like, iMessage is fine, or like you can just use WhatsApp. And there's not a recognition that there is actually like some basic vulnerability in using some of these more that aren't using like hard edged privacy, that is actually prioritizing privacy as a desirable user side quality of a system. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. It's there. It's like I think it's just like about making sure that things are um, like that the privacy is not something you have to think about. And I think that's why it's become kind of a four-letter word. So um, Alua Tosin, where do you see Penumbra in the next year? That's a great question. We see it continuing to grow in terms of its so on the financial side. Right now, the DEX needs to increase in its depth of liquidity. This is the reason that the liquidity tournament is something that y'all can expect to see in the near future. There needs to be deeper liquidity. There needs to be continued improvements on what it is that the experience is like to be a trader, to be a liquidity provider, to be in like just a holder of in general, and gaining benefits from having the token in the first place, either as a staker or otherwise. So those things need to be really focused on in the immediate term, but a year is a long time, right? Like a lot can happen in a year. And so this is why we're there, like as an ecosystem, we are focusing on, we want to get these kind of like table stakes steps first, where it's okay, like let's stabilize a local economy and a local initial user base that we can iterate with very, very closely to build a very strong basis on which to develop like a larger ecosystem. And that larger ecosystem is only going to exist with the help of developers who build things to connect to with Penumbra. So over the next year, there's going to be a lot more focus kind of in the longer term, once there's some basic milestones met for the Penumbra's total value shielded, and for the total value provided in liquidity on the network. Once those milestones have been hit, there's going to be a lot more focus, and actually it probably won't be because of these milestones, it'll be alongside these milestones. There's going to be a lot more focus put into the developer experience, because if there's one thing that we know from crypto, it's that your community is some percentage people who want to use your application, and some people who want to figure out how to use their application to do things that they want to do. right? And privacy as a generally like a general purpose concept is something that we need to be able to expand. If Penumbra has great primitives, if people want to build more, want to build private rollups, like components of Penumbra's architecture are what afford those outcomes. So that's something that we can expect to see over the next year. But I think we can also expect to see this like concentration on Penumbra expanding what it means to be a home for crypto, like to be a place that you can start from as you go and use other chains. Like, and I want to be very clear on how we're defining this. We're not defining this as being like you're only going to use Penumbra, right? It means Penumbra is kind of like the place you want to start from, and you can go do whatever you want in every other domain. But because of the privacy guarantees offered by Penumbra, you end up wanting to come back because it makes the most sense. You're leaking the least alpha when you go out and use other chains. And so this means that over the next year, there have been increases in compatibility with other environments. And this is where we'll see some potential future partnerships really bear fruit. One of the conversations that we're having right now is potentially expanding connection, not just through other IBC ecosystems or other IBC chains, but specifically in the use of Hyperlane. And interacting with Hyperlane would give us access to any number of domains that Hyperlane is offering as kind of their as part of their communication infrastructure. So it's a long answer, but over the next year, you can expect to see sort of some steady growth of Penumbra on a local level to establish a committed user base and committed, concentrated, and deep liquidity, and then move into improving the developer experience so that in the future, maybe in the next, maybe even beyond the next year, maybe towards the end of this next year, we can really start developing what it means for Penumbra to be something, a place that you want to start and end at every time you engage with crypto. So that's a great question. I really appreciate that. So again, any other questions that are out there from people who are watching this call, really appreciate you all being on the call. These calls happen every 2 weeks. And Ember, I can give you a little bit more of the wheel here to talk about like the community call architecture. And then you have the expectation to we have some other calls that might be in the pipe too. Are you ready to share about those, or do you want to maybe do that on a different call?
Yeah, totally, because things are going to be starting next week. So during this slot, so we have community calls going on every other week, and during the off weeks, we're going to have onboarding parties because lots of people want help and they want to get involved and see what is up, and it is really helpful to do that in little crews. We'll have some of our awesome mods there. Probably there will be some of us there, hanging out, answering questions, and kind of just walking me through yes, onboarding cohorts, such a cute idea. Yeah, so we'll be doing that on every other week. We're also going to be starting games nights, so we can have other ways to kind of hang out, get to know each other, and just be in the Discord together, learn more about each other, learn more about what you guys want and need from the Penumbra space. So those are the upcoming events. Other things that are in the works is more structured onboarding for folks who are new to Penumbra, as well as the onboarding parties, more resources so that people, when they're first getting acquainted with what's going on here, aren't just completely inundated with information, and it might not make sense, and it depends on your context and all of that. So we want to be able to make that as clear as possible for how people can participate and be a part of this. Let's see, what else do we have going on? We are going to be bringing in Engage Bot, so we're going to be doing lots of points and raffles to make sure that people are seeing all of our cool tweets with all of the amazing updates, because there's so much going on all of the time, and we really want to get the word out, especially ahead of the LQT, as we call it, the liquidity tournament. We are also there might be some NFT projects in the works. They look amazing. So we're very excited about that. Just sprinkling all of the things. So keep watching the space. Please join us in the Discord. We are going to be incentivizing more of this feedback, as Park and Gar both mentioned. We really, really appreciate having user perspective on what is needed and what needs to happen, and what that experience looks like. So we're going to be having more onboarding towards that flow as well. I don't know what you're talking about, BCB. Who looks amazing? They look amazing. Um, so yes, lots and lots going on. Please join us in the Discord, and you'll see activity increasing in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned. Did you have anything else you wanted to mention, Park? Yeah. Thought you were talking about me.
I mean, you do look amazing. Let's be honest with ourselves. No, I don't have like anything specific. I think it's great to hear that next week we can have some of these onboarding parties. Maybe I'll drop in. I'd love to help out where I can. And then I know the week after that we should have a demo, working demo of the Explorer that people can interact with the team that's working on that. So a lot to be expected. I'm really excited to see that we're like kind of picking up velocity here. And very, very glad for everyone who has very glad for everyone who's joined us on this call and has been in the comments. I am looking forward to more of these calls in the future. I think one thing that maybe you didn't mention is the potential for validator calls in the near future.
Yes.
That's something that I think is going to probably happen pretty soon. Just because, like, I think for infrastructure providers in particular, I think that's something we need to offer as well. Just so that there's like more, infrastructure level updates, and so they have some level of awareness. And I think ahead of like any sort of um, protocol changes that are a result of these upcoming events that we've been talking about, for example, Liquidity tournament, it's very likely that a protocol change will be required. So it's always good to have the validator community engaged as a part of the group of people that ensure that the number keeps going.
Yes, we love our
Yeah.
validators, want you to feel supported and to have everything that
Yeah.
you need.
Yeah, this is also a good time to say, like, it doesn't take much to become a validator on Penumbra. So if you want to be a validator on Penumbra, I think the floor is like 100 Penumbra right now, which is like very low. So if you want, and that's to cast a huge difference between the amount staked to all the validators on the network. Like, so there's a lot of chance for upside if you're an emerging validator and you really want to grow with the Penumbra ecosystem as it moves forward. This is like the chance is still there. There's been some rotation in the validator set, and I encourage you all to like join it because we're really starting to like accelerate a little bit more here. And having a good team, a good group of validators who are responsive, especially people who are early to this ecosystem in particular. It's if you are looking for a place to get like a foothold as a validator, Penumbra is a great place. And who knows, like that might benefit you in the long run with respect to kind of building your name around what we hope is going to be a product as close to the users as possible.
Well, unless anyone has any other questions, although we will answer your questions in Discord, we're
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
This is not the end of that opportunity. But it seems that we are good, unless you guys had anything else that you wanted to share.
No, I think we're solid. Ooh, shoot. That was a celebratory truck horn.
Hello, truck.
Yeah, okay, cool. Well, thanks everyone.
Well,
Thanks again for another great community call.
Thanks, Andy.
Always glad to see people in the comments, and we'll see you soon. See you around.
cool. Thanks, everyone.